For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lee Purvis and I am the coordinator for PRCA Yorkshire. I just wanted to start with a little bit of housekeeping this morning. Obviously the usual, if everybody could mute themselves, that would be great. And if anybody has a question to ask, if they could raise their hands, or in fact use the chat panel to the right. Also, a great pleasure to be joined this morning by PRCA Director of Comms and Marketing, Corey Cam Goss. It's lovely for you to join us today. And our very special guest, of course, is Member of Parliament for Rother Valley, Alexander Stafford. Thank you for joining us this morning, Alexander. This format is basically a really informal Q&A. So I thought if we could just kick off with you talking a little bit about yourself, really basic things, I guess, to begin with. So, for example, what on earth made you become an MP for a start? Because you worked in communications for years, didn't you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Lee, and thank you for having me here today. It's a great pleasure. For those that don't know, my name is Alexander Stafford. I am the Conservative Member of Parliament for Rother Valley, and I'm the first ever Conservative Member of Parliament for Rother Valley in 101 years. And to put that in perspective, in 1974, Rother Valley was Labour's safest seat, and we took it off. I took it off Labour in December this year, and now has almost 6,500 majority. So under normal circumstances, that would be considered a safe Conservative seat. So it's amazing how things change. And I think actually a large part of that is also down to communications and how the two parties, Labour and Conservative, talking to the public and the voters, and how I think, personally, Labour has stopped talking properly to their voters, especially in these seats like Rother Valley, and Conservatives have got it right. But maybe that's for later on. Now, my background, why I got into politics. I've been politically interested for quite a long time. I studied politics at school, at sixth form. When at university, I got involved in sort of party political politics, got involved with the Conservatives, mainly as a good social scene. As a big society, lots of people, interesting people, exposed to new ideas, new views. So I thought that was really good. But I think quite a lot of it comes back to myself, my family, and who I am. My parents aren't political in the slightest. I mean, they vote, they always vote, but they're not political anyway, not big party members or the like, so I got really involved. But I think quite a lot down to my sort of background. My grandparents on my mother's side were refugees after the Second World War. My grandfather was Polish-Ukrainian. He ended up in a Soviet gulag in Siberia. And my grandmother was East German, Polish. So after the Second World War, they couldn't go back. My grandfather couldn't go back because he fought in the Polish Free Army, and the Soviets did not approve of that. So they ended up as refugees in England. They came over here with literally nothing, didn't speak the language, knew absolutely nothing about the country really, and lived in a dispersed refugee camp basically, and that's where my mother was born. And from those groups with nothing, they worked hard, they threw themselves into the community accepted them, helped them, supported them, gave something back, and really helped them. My mother went to university, got a good job, etc., etc. And it's really that sort of benefit which my grandparents got from the community, which I think instills to myself and my brother as well, who's involved in various things, that sense of community and how important it is that you look after people, that community matters. But not just that, also the ability to go anywhere. And I do think in this country, and I think it has diminished over the years, but still there, you can be born with literally nothing. You can come over here with no language, with no money, and still, if you work hard and you are a good person, you can make the most of it. And that to me is incredibly important, that opportunity to go forward. And that is something I really strive for, that service to the community, and also that belief that everyone, no matter where they come from in life, should be able to achieve anything they want to achieve. And that is incredibly important. So I sort of started my sort of political career. I hate to use the word career. I worked in Parliament for two MPs for 3.5 years, for Owen Paterson and Rosendale. And also lately I decided I wanted to see if I wanted to enjoy politics myself. So I stood and became a councillor. And I thought being a councillor was very interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it, helping out people, because, let's be honest, you like to think politicians are all involved in the big things like war and peace and all that stuff, but 90% of it is to do with potholes and bin collection, because fundamentally that's what matters to people, and that's what everyone sees on a day-to-day basis. And actually, it makes a huge difference to people's life. It's that incremental small differences that makes a massive difference. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was councillor for 6 years. I resigned after the election. And I decided I wanted to get more involved. Now, for Rother Valley, my wife's family, part of my wife's family, come from the constituency just outside of Dillington, if any of you know it. My mother used to work back in the 70s up in Stocksbridge. so in sort of for the British Steel as was. It's an area that I knew and loved very well, and frankly, it represented my views more. It was I voted for Brexit, strong Brexit believer. The area, Rother Valley, voted 67% Brexit. The sense of community, the sense of family values, those things really appealed to me, and that ability, the desire to make a difference and improve these left behind areas. And we talk about this of areas, red wall areas, as left behind. And I'd say Rother Valley was left behind. A lot of South Yorkshire was left behind. And I'm not going to say that's a party that's opponent against Labour, who I think have let it. Also the Conservatives, so you must be honest about this. The Conservatives have neglected these areas as well. I mean, if you said this seat never been Conservative, so the party didn't put as much resource and focus on areas like we could have done. Because why would we? We'd not would have win. They put the resource into areas we could win. Likewise, Labour were convinced they'll never lose the area, so why put any resource into losing the area? So I think both parties, Conservative and Labour, had neglected these areas, and Labour took them for granted. Conservatives almost didn't put much resource in as they frankly should have done. But now things have changed. I think regardless of who you voted for at the general election in South Yorkshire, Rother Valley, Don Valley, Penistone and Stocksbridge, all Conservative. You've got even like Ed Miliband's seat, a 2,000 majority, I think. John Healy's seat, 2,000 majority. Sarah Champion's seat, 3,000 majority. So frankly, I think nearly all the seats in South Yorkshire now are I hate to say it, winnable by any party, either Labour or Conservatives. And that is a good thing. That creates competition. That creates people to actually work harder and actually care for the area. So I think that's a good thing. And just one point, sorry, because I keep talking about Rother Valley, and many of you will never even know what that means. So I'll just tell you what that area is, because it's also a made-up word. Rother Valley is basically South Yorkshire, from the South Yorkshire border up to and including a tiny bit of Rotherham in the north. So the Derbyshire border up to Rotherham. Then you go basically into Sheffield to the west, Treaton, Orgreaves, the Advanced Retail Manufacturing Park, and then across to the sort of villages of Birkbeck. To the east and Woodset. It includes the main towns of Dinnington and Maltby, and Kipperton, Swallownest. So very pit-heavy area.
Thank you so much, Alexander. That was brilliant. So obviously, you mentioned community, hugely important in everything we all do, actually. And obviously, for that purpose, a lot of us rely on digital and social media. Now, obviously, you've had experience in the comms industry right through to being in Parliament. So you've obviously become very digital savvy in your role as an MP, because you've had to, I guess. You were regular on social media. How do you decide how much to share on social media? Because it is so competitive as an MP, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very fine balance, and it takes up a large chunk of time. But I think it's an essential tool in the toolbox to communicate, talk to MP, to voters and my constituents. And I hate using communications, but it's talking to people. Because in my constituency, there's 76,000 electors, 95,000 people live there. There's no way. I hold surgeries every week, whether online, in person, lots less person out of COVID. I can't speak to 95,000 people. Even in the next 4 years, I just can't do that. I knock on doors. During the election campaign, I knocked on 4,000 doors. It's a lot of doors, but there are a lot more doors out there to knock on. And you just can't do that. So for me, it's how do I speak to as many people as possible? And this is I'm not saying, vote for me, vote for me. I'm saying what I'm doing. Because the majority of people anywhere in the country don't care about politics. It's something which they do every 4 or 5 years. They know they should do it. It's a good thing. But apart from that, they just want politicians to get on with doing our job. And I think that's one of the reasons we had all this sort of mess over the last 4 or 5 years, because politicians couldn't make up their mind what to do and kept going back to the public. So how do I tell my constituents what I'm doing? But also, more importantly, how do constituents tell me what I'm doing? I get lots of emails and letters every day. I get probably about 100, 150 emails a day, sort of thing. During the height of COVID, it was 500. I deal with them. I think I've dealt with 5,000, 6,000 people, sort of when they've come to me and talking to them, which is a lot of people. But once again, 5,000, 6,000 people is not 95,000 people. So to me, social media talks to people. I think in years gone by, the sort of print press was incredibly important. We've got the Rotherham Advertiser in my seat. We've got a few other papers, Works of Guardian and the Sheffield Star. But the circulation, brutally honest, is just collapsing. They are the print press in local paper, and it's a great shame, is a dying industry. So yes, I can talk through the papers in the sense that I can put press releases out, but I can't reach that many voters. I can't meet that many constituents. I think the Royal advertises a circulation of 20,000, and that covers 3 seats. So even divided by 3, I'm only getting to sort of 7,000-8,000 people a week. Which, once again, is not the majority of people. And on top of that, the print press is up to them what they decide to write about. And a lot of publications, I'm not saying mine are, but a lot of publications have a political bent either way. On top of that, like everyone, they're the curators. The editorial decision of what they write, what they don't write. I mean, I've said stories in which I think should be, frankly, front page news or really interesting, and for whatever reason, local papers decided not to write it. I have, sent them stories, what a quote, which I thought, frankly, wasn't a story, but they put the stories in. I'm not the editor. Whereas social media allows me to be my own editor, allows me to be my own, telling people what I want to say and what people listen to, so they can sort of engage. So a lot of MPs do different things. So I have 2 main platforms. I've got Twitter and I've got Facebook. My view, there's obviously lots of many channels. My demographic in Rother Valley, it's not a particularly young demographic. They are digital, and I think they're very switched on, but the likes of like TikTok or Snapchat, I don't think would really benefit or me or the constituents. I think there is a conversation about Instagram, but I haven't done anything much on Instagram yet, so I can't really comment on whether it works or not. But for my main thing, it's Facebook and Twitter. And I think the first thing is most people, the overwhelming majority of people, are now digital. And that's any age group and any demographic, any wealth background. Yes, there are some people, and that's the issue we need to speak to, especially the older generation who can't do it, but most people are on the internet, and most people are on Facebook. Despite Facebook being, 15 years old now, it is still the #1 platform for engagement, far more than Twitter. And why is that? Because everyone is on Facebook. People are on Facebook not because of politics. People are on Facebook because they want to share cat pictures. People are on Facebook because they want to, catch up with their grandchildren. People are on Facebook because they want to arrange a birthday party. It's a very usable, practical tool. They don't go on Facebook, in the majority, to talk about politics, which means far more people are on Facebook and are more likely to engage with those people. So on my Facebook, I post probably once or twice a day, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what's going on. And my view on Facebook is I want my Facebook page to be a family channel, a constituency channel, a channel people want to go to. It's not me throwing my voice at people because no one listens. Why do you want to listen to a boring politician? You can, watch BBC Parliament if you want. They want to know things which what I'm doing as their representative and how I'm helping the community or affecting the community. So to me, with my Facebook, I make it sort of hyper-local. I think everything I post on Facebook is local, or at least has a local bent to it, i.e. it will be relevant to the local area, or I think the local people will really care about an issue. And I try and make it what I'm doing as a MP. So it's like going to shops, it's going to restaurants, it's going to small business groups, it's going to factories. It's actually talking to the constituents saying, this is what I'm doing as your MP. I'm in the chamber. I also put up what I do in the chamber when it's relevant. But my job is part in Parliament, but part also being in the community and listening to people. And because Facebook, you generally have to have your real name, you generally list where you are, you're part of lots of different local groups, forums. It's a way of actually sharing what I'm doing to people. But also, it's also a way of people engaging. So I'm more likely to respond to people in my Facebook because the odds are they're going to be in my constituency. The odds are they're not going to be some random trolls from Scotland or whatever who want to abuse me because I don't like the SNP. And they actually have that dialogue. So yes, I can't see every comment. I can't do everything. But I find it a way, it's a platform that I can properly engage with people. I know that, Mrs. Jane Smith, who's asking me about cats or whatever, or commenting on it, isn't probably Mrs. Jane Smith from, 42 Furbeck Road. I presume that's that person. And therefore I can have that dialogue and that conversation with them. And that builds a more localized performance and actually make it relevant, because people on Facebook want to be there to see something relevant to their area. They want to know what I'm doing in Kiverton or Swallowness. They want to know what I'm doing for Morpeth, Dington, they want to know how it affects them. So that's what I do Facebook. Now Twitter, sorry,
I'm loving it. If you could just talk about Twitter, and then I've got another question for you about the downsides of being.
I'll just mention on Twitter and then go to the downside. Twitter is, for me anyway, is more national, because anyone could be on Twitter, anywhere in the world. They may not be real. People can put any picture up and they can talk about whatever. So to me, I do put up some local stuff, what I'm doing, but to me, it's not that relevant. I mean, majority of people on my Twitter are, I'd say 90% of my Facebook followers live in a constituency, or at least next to constituency, or have some strong connection to the constituency. Maybe 95%, that's wrong. Twitter, looking at my people who follow me, and I would say it's the other way around, 5%, if that, of the people on my Twitter have any connection to the constituency. So I'm more doing that as my sort of national voice, what I'm doing in Parliament, what my big campaign, national campaigns, not local campaigns, what I'm doing as a Conservative politician. And this is what I'm doing. My Twitter is very unashamedly conservative of what I'm doing. My Facebook, yes, there's bits every now and again, but it's very much, I don't want to alienate, I want to talk to the whole constituency regardless of who you voted for. When you're doing a constituency job, you're not a party politician, you're an MP, you're a proper MP. Therefore, it should be, I want to appeal to everyone. Whereas Twitter is more political. People join Twitter generally to be more political, to have those views, and they feel empowered to do that. So I very much treat Twitter as my sort of talking out, to the wider world, what I'm doing, and Facebook to actually really engage with my constituents. And Lee, you mentioned the negatives, and I'll swing over. Twitter is a cesspit. I'm going to say it loud and proud. It is just, the amount of abuse I get on it is horrific. I mean, genuinely horrific. Even today, people are, calling me all sorts, and I think acceptable, because some of the reason on Twitter, more than Facebook, people think it's okay to say what they want and insult politicians and insult other people and just be ghastly. And it's really sad, really. I still think it's important to talk about it, but the constant amount of abuse that I get on Twitter is something, I mean, not something else a lot of people, I'm very lucky. A lot of my colleagues get it a lot worse, especially the female MPs get it absolutely. I mean, the stuff which they say get to female MPs is just, I mean, how these people sleep at night is just amazing. I don't know, it's just disgusting. But people seem empowered by Twitter because it's a political platform. They always feel it's their duty to attack the other side. And it's very much side, like you are with us or you're against us. We're going to attack you, regardless. If we're Labour, we're going to attack you. SNP will attack you. And don't get me wrong, they're Conservative trolls as well, who attack Labour and Liberals and SNP. It works both ways. There is people who feel empowered that it's almost their duty to go and attack. And there's a lot less. There is some of that on Facebook, but there's a lot less of it. I think that's very important. People don't feel empowered to be so nasty, and I think that is the main downside. But one more upside, as I said, is that is a way for me to, especially Facebook, is a way for you to talk to people and understand what their priorities are. Now on Twitter, I mean, if you listen to my tweet, you would think my constituency was a. Sorry, my constituency. Sorry, the phone's going. Yeah, sorry about that. My constituency was a massive Remain supporting, pro-immigration, anti-Christian seat. Sorry. It's really not. I mean, whereas 67% of my constituents voted Leave. And even in this election, I got 45% of the vote, and the Brexit Party got another sort of 12% of the vote. I mean, it's a heavy lead. But if you listen to all the people talking to me about how I should vote, it's completely unrepresentative. Whereas Facebook, I find far more representative, and people on all sides talk. And it's a good way of gauging what people's in a constituency, what people's actual views and priorities are. So that to me is an important thing.
So that's really interesting in itself, isn't it? So really kind of using Facebook as a tool, really a total research tool in one way. I've just got a question through here for me to ask you from one of our members. Are MPs requested or required to have social comms reviewed by anyone, or does anyone guide your comms? So how that is you from the heart?
I mean, no, yes and no. And there's nobody, and that's any aspect of my job. If I want to sit around for 4 years and do literally nothing, i.e. not go to the House of Commons chamber, not write a single letter, not visit the constituency once, I would still be the MP, and I'll still do it. That's what I can all not do for Facebook, up to me. Everything in an MP's job is completely up to them, and every office is run in a slightly different way. So I can't complain. But for me, I curate my Twitter and Facebook. I have staff members, obviously, and they help me with that. They help me propose tweets or Facebook, and they will post things on my behalf, but I check everything and put everything up. Do we get any central training from any of our house authorities? No. Do we get any central guidance? No. What we get, I'm sure Labour do the same, I don't know, is on various things. The Conservative Party will send me certain graphics. That's more national stuff. They won't do local stuff. I mean, if I want help saying design me a poster to promote my surgery, someone in the team will do a nice graphic. But they won't do anything sort of hyper local. But they will do, Labour did this, or we're getting 20,000 more police, or Labour voted against Brexit. They will send me and other MPs those sort of graphics, all branded with a Conservative logo, so it's clear who they come from, and then it's up to me whether I tweet or Facebook it or not. And generally, I don't Facebook it. Occasionally, I will tweet it, depending if it's relevant. So we don't get any support apart from some graphics every now and again, sort of thing.
What are your thoughts on politics rebranding and communicating to the next generation? Obviously, it's such a powerful vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. I think the massive dichotomy at the moment problem is the actual electorate, because politicians only have a certain amount of time. Older people vote far more than younger people. So a lot of resource dedicated to speaking to older people, and less is to younger people. I think that's a great shame. I think there's less work done it, and I mentioned about sort of Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok and stuff, which I don't engage with. I think that's a great shame, because no one's sort of sat down with me to explain to me why this is a good thing or not a good thing. And I think some of those channels might appeal to the younger generation more. I'd say that I'm 30, I'm 33. I'm not that old yet. And I think we saw it in 2017 with Labour did a very good job at engaging the sort of youth vote with digital channels. The Conservatives didn't. I think Conservatives are far better in digital job in 2019. The sort of Love Actually spoof video, the sort of various shots of Boris knocking down walls with JCBs and stuff plays very, very well on social media. But I think in 2017 we were atrocious, frankly. We were really behind the curve. How do we engage with young people on social media is very difficult, because most people don't talk about politics. And those people that really are passionate about politics, they've already made their minds up. It's trying to speak to people who are engaging the community, normal people, and talking to them about what you're doing. And I think a lot of the sort of a lot of young people aren't part of the Kiverton Park Facebook group. They're not part of the local group, because it's not about, because most of the groups are like, I've lost my cat, or I'm selling my mattress or whatever, or I'm going doing a litter pick, come join me. There's a lot of people who aren't engaging in that way, which is a great shame. So how do we actually get out there? I don't know. It's a tricky situation. And the question is, do this young generation who's not engaging with politics, digital otherwise, do they then, as they get a bit older, get more settled, have a family, buy a house, etc., do they get more involved in their community? I think probably yes. And as people become more rooted, then they get more involved in this sort of aspect of it. But I think quite a lot of it, sounds a cop-out, is down to the education system. We don't teach politics properly at school. We don't teach, I learned politics as a sixth form about, feminism and Marxism and communism and all that sort of isms. But no one ever talked to me really about what being a councillor was. Nobody talked to me about why it's important to vote, apart from you must vote. Nobody talked to me about how my voice, wherever I lived, made a difference, how that affected my vote. No one told me that just because, my MP doesn't necessarily vote the way I want them to vote, doesn't mean they don't represent me. They still represent me. It's that education that's severely lacking. And I think that does turn a lot of young people off when they think, I'm very passionate about this cause, but my MP is not, therefore they're not representative. Well, no, it means, unfortunately, that you elect an individual and then you can vote them out. And that sort of education is severely lacking.
Yeah, Lee, I would just add to that I think there's certainly a point that there is an issue with younger people and their interest in politics. But I think a broader point from that view is the fact that young people, from what we can see certainly, really show interest on specific issues and specific topics. And I think that's one of the powerful things about social media. And I know we can often get caught into the trap of thinking of Twitter and Facebook as social media. And of course, as Alex has alluded to, it's a lot broader than that. But it does have a real power to bring people and unite people together around specific topics. I know just recently, for example, it was a group of people who came together to discuss the issue of food poverty, which inspired Marcus Rashford to get behind the campaign and eventually successfully campaign for a change in legislation. So Twitter is most definitely a cesspit, and I'm sure for those in power and for those in influential positions, it can be a really, really dark place at times. But there's certainly a tremendous amount of potential and value that it can provide to giving a voice to the voiceless and providing an opportunity for people to unite around specific issues.
No, I agree. And actually, you mentioned Marcus, which is a great example of how actually a social media campaign can change government policy. I mean, the governments make mistakes. Conservative governments make mistakes, of course we have. And things fall through the gaps. And this clearly fell through the gaps. And actually, it was that campaign that changed the government's mind, because this issue fell through the cracks. And you're right, it's a huge social media campaign, which actually alerted lots of MPs to what the issue was, and therefore the MPs then put the pressure on the government. So yeah, sometimes it's a shame it had to take a social media campaign to get to this point. But yeah, it can be a massive force for good when it comes to these national campaigns.
Could I ask a question, or a couple of questions, please? Hi, and thank you for your time this morning, Alexander. I know the area very well. I used to work as a reporter on the Worksop Guardian, and
Okay.
I know I worked at Rotherham Council as head of communications for a while, so I know the area very well. So 2 questions from me. One is that you have, if you like, a trio of constituencies with Rotherham Central, Rother Valley. They've got Sarah Champion and John Healy. So as a Conservative MP, obviously you've identified that it's a very, very long time since there's been any Conservative representation in that area. Lots of poor constituents, lots of high social deprivation. So to what extent do you successfully work with your fellow MPs in that kind of trio of constituencies to the wider benefit of that area? And also, one more thing is, one thing concerns me about the digital only approach is that there are people in your constituency who don't access digital or social. They don't do emails. They're frightened of stuff like that, particularly an older demographic. So how do you reach your older constituents, that ones that tend to like face-to-face or traditional print, which, as we know, is in decline, but there's still a need to reach all of your constituents rather than those that just use Facebook, Twitter, and the tools we talked about?
I'll answer that. Thank you for the comments, and I'll answer that straight away. In the sense that you're right, there are people who can't read digital, and I'm not saying only do digital. I think I do engage the local papers. I'm constantly asking the Rotherham Advertiser for an op-ed, weekly, monthly, bi-yearly, whatever, and they keep refusing to say no, which is a great shame, because I think all 3 MPs should have a roving op-ed to talk about what we're doing to get to their constituents, and they just won't do it. Anyway, I don't know why. I mean, for instance, I had an op-ed in the Worksop Guardian once a month. And the Worksop Guardian covers a bit of my seat, but not the majority. And they're happy to give me a few column every month, which I can engage in that way, and it's great. So I think in some ways, and I put a lot of press releases out, but I wish the advertiser would actually engage more with me and allow me and the other MPs in a balanced way, not party political, etc., to talk about what we're doing.
But what do you do? What do you do to reach your constituents?
Send press releases, leaflets. I mean, we obviously stopped during COVID. Did our first leaflet session not two weekends ago around Maltby, putting out leaflets, telling people what I'm doing, my contact details. Got my office on Dington High Street. Anyone could drop. Once again, after COVID, anyone could drop in and have see me. Before COVID, I was doing face-to-face surgeries. I'm starting to do sort of outdoor sort of face-to-face now. They're not proper surgeries. I'm still trying to do it on the phone rather than. But I'm still like, I went to someone's house and I'm in their garden. We sat in the garden in the freezing temperature, not like today, to talk about issues. So I am doing that, writing letters to people and just knocking on doors. I think that's incredibly important, because you are right. We can't get to everyone. And that is social media can't get to everyone. That's a great shame. So I want to be, anyone can write a letter to me. Anyone can sort of ring up my office or knock on the door and get an appointment. I'm open to absolutely anyone in the constituency or anyone who works in the constituency. And it's one of those things, like literally, if you write my name on a piece of paper and stick it in an envelope, it will come to my office in the House of Commons. Literally, anywhere that you don't need a stamp. It's one of those little things, because the House of Commons pay for it. It's one of those sort of things. If you I can't have my budget if you stick that, so it's accessible for all. But it is hard. And before obviously COVID, I was doing home visits as well. So I was going to people's homes, or somebody wanted me not in their homes, but they wanted at the office. So I'd go to like a pub or a coffee shop to meet them as well. So it's very much about being accessible. And I put out adverts. I've actually taken out adverts in the Rotherham Advertiser to promote my my details, my telephone numbers, my email addresses, my website, all that. So that's out there, so people can see it. So I'm trying to do that way. During COVID, I got a leaflet out to every single person in the constituency. Went out to Royal Mail, paper copy with all my details on, as well as a A4 folder, 2 pieces of A4 together. With all the details about COVID help, COVID action group, the government advice is very much like one-stop shop. Obviously, changed quite a lot of what to do in COVID, and that went through every single. We paid for it to go through every single door in the constituency. So it's very important to do that kind of thing as well. As working together, I'm very lucky with Sarah and John. I mean, I know a lot of other MPs, frankly, the Labour won't be Tories and vice versa, but Sarah and John are good people. They work hard, they care about their areas, and we have a very good working relationship. We come together on, we have meetings, I think, every 2 months with the Chief Executive and leader of the Council. We have joint meetings with the NHS we will help each other out. I mean, when Sarah stood for, even Parliament, when Sarah stood for the DFID, that's the International Development Select Committee, I supported her. She had a debate on smart motorways, which I'm against. She's against. She held the debate, and I went and supported her and spoke on the debate as well. So we do work very closely together. John obviously is a Shadow Cabinet member, Shadow Secretary for Defence, so he's got quite a lot of that sort of national side of things to do. We do that, but I'd say us three work together. I'm very lucky having colleagues like that. And also, let's be honest, we're not going to have a general election for 4 years. There's no need to be party political. I'm sure 2 months after the general election, whatever it is, we might be less convivial, obviously. But at the moment, we're here for 4 years at least. Let's work together for the best for our residents, our people.
Thank you for that, Alexander. I hope, Carmel, that's answered most of that question. Just a quick one, Alexander, we've got a question that's come through. How are you planning to participate in Parliament Week in your constituency?
Well, I read it's quite different this week because of the social distancing. Now we've got, I think, 4 or 5 organisations signing up to doing various activities. Now, obviously, the problem is now rule of 6 about me getting involved in them. I have promoted Parliament Week, and I've contacted the groups getting involved and offered them my support. But unfortunately, this week it is this year rather, it's hard to do, and I hate to use the thing COVID because we can't be doing big events. We were planning to do big things in the office. We can't do that because of the restrictions. So it's more about sort of those smaller groups that are doing stuff, me offering support, and I've offered a call with them, a video call with them. If they're small groups, I've offered to come and sort of participate, but it has to be, once again, a very small group now, which makes it a lot harder. So I do hate to say about this week, I think Parliament Week is not going to be what we wanted it to be. We had bigger plans, but we are in the situation we are.
What are your thoughts that politics is all essentially PR?
I don't think it's all PR, but I think it's communications is incredibly important. And once again, it's about that dialogue. I can only do my job as good as the information that I know about the residents and what they care about. If people, my constituents, care about, or most of them care about a certain thing, then it's my job. So it's my job to understand and try to understand what people care about, how they want me to act. In this country, we have representative democracy. So I act, as you know, on behalf of the residents of Rother Valley. But I want to act in their best interest. I can only do that by having communications with them, and for me to have that dialogue. And and if I vote or say things which my residents don't agree with, I want them to engage me and tell me that I'm wrong. I want them to come and challenge me. I want them to invite me to meetings to say, I'm doing a bad job, or even a good job. That's better. So I think in that sense, it's important. And people can only have that trust in politics if they have that dialogue. And it is a two-way street. It's not just me telling people what I'm doing. I want to know what people care about as well. I want them to tell me what affects them. I want them to explain to me how the system works, or often doesn't work for them, and what the loopholes are. And we saw this during COVID. We had one constituent issue with in-home care, so not care homes, but in-home care, so someone coming to your home, which basically fell through the cracks when it came to support from the government. I raised that with the government because we have a big provider in my constituency. We raised the government, they changed the rules and some of the support measures for that. So it's about sort of plugging those gaps. So it's not about PR at all, but it is about communicating residents to myself to the residents.
Lee, I would just add to that, and I agree with everything that Alex has said. I think when a question's framed like that, often PR is presented as this kind of like fluff, add-on, lipstick approach to communications. But I mean, the answer to that question depends on what your interpretation of PR is, because if you're talking about public relations in terms of it being a vehicle to create change in attitudes or opinions and behaviors, then yes, PR is a big part of politics. But certainly, as Alex has said, that there are deeper considerations to take into account. I think the other thing to consider, particularly for social media and politics, is the ability or the potential that social media offers practitioners and politicians just to listen. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful listening tool, and the insight that you can glean, whether you're talking about your constituents or your customers from these channels, is absolutely critical, and that should form the basis of any campaigning or communications work that you're doing. So listening is another crucial point, I'd say.
No, it is the most important thing, I'd say. It is very important.
Just going slightly off-piste, I'd like to ask you, Alexander, how you prepare for speaking in Parliament, and can you remember the first time you did it, and how nervous were you on a scale of 1 to 10?
I wasn't that nervous. It sounds awful. So there's different ways of speaking in Parliament, in the sense that I'm sure many of you have heard of a MP's maiden speech, which is the first speech they give in Parliament. So I gave mine in, I think, June or May or sometime. But actually, I'd spoken about 30 times in Parliament before that. So there's ways of speaking in Parliament before you do give like a big speech. You can intervene in a debate. Someone's doing a debate, you can stand up, make a point, debate, or you can ask a question. So the first time I spoke in Parliament was, I can't remember, January sometime. And it was a question. So you apply for questions. Every day a minister speaks, answers questions. You apply. It goes in the ballot. So I want to ask a minister a question. Then the top 30 have an opportunity to ask. So it's very hard to get a question, but you do it. And I got a question on for Bays, and I wanted to raise a key issue with my constituency, that is fracking. The government put a moratorium on fracking. There's 2 fracking sites in my constituency, down Harthill and Woodsets, and I was very passionately that I wanted to try reaffirm my support for the residents when it comes to being against the fracking, and also to challenge the government to try and force them to continue to uphold the moratorium. So in fact, I wasn't nervous, but I was quite excited about raising this issue. On general points, how do I prepare? So much of what I do is what constituents care about. When I read my 100 whatever emails a day, I get a flavour of what matters to people, whether it's COVID testing, whether it's care homes, whether it's local team doing well in the sport fixtures. There I can get my inspiration from what I should be talking about, what I should be asking, and then from these everyday conversations. So generally I try to ask as much as I can, which is relevant to constituency groups and issues. Obviously, there are national politics, which obviously the last couple of days we've been talking about the Internal Markets Bill, which is about, basically it's a bit another Brexit bill, and I'm not here for the rights and wrongs of the bill, but it's about talking about Brexit and what that means. Obviously, my area is very heavily Leave, so it's important that I spoke on that behalf. So it depends also what sort of type of bill it is, because sometimes when it's a second reading bill, it's more of a wider debate. We talk about just the concepts and themes and views. Which I did, but then on the other hand, if it's a more second committee stage, you're literally going almost line by clauses, and you have to talk to a particular new clause or particular amendment to the bill and actually say, I agree with this amendment because X or Y or that, and that's a lot more technical. So that takes a lot more sort of research and working, contacting the House Commons Library. What does this amendment mean for my constituents? How does it change the bill? And then that is a lot more technical and a lot more detailed and requires a lot more work. And actually, I think is a lot more. That's a lot more nervous because you have to know your stuff. You can't just stand up and waffle about how wonderful the Conservatives are or how wonderful the constituencies is. You can't just stand up and say, isn't Rother Valley a wonderful place, and talk about that, and isn't it great all these local groups? No, you have to say why are you against this line in the bill, or why are you for this line in the bill? So it's very, very detailed and implications. So I'm more nervous when it comes to the details of the actual bills.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting. And I know obviously recently you've been endorsing the Kickstart scheme. And Karai, we were mentioning that as well, because obviously PRCA are heavily involved with that. Karai, do you want to talk to us a little bit about that really, and a bit more?
Yes, so from our point of view, we published details last week following the announcement from the Treasury. And we're really proud to get behind the scheme. It's an outstanding example of government taking positive action to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. So essentially, it gives businesses funding to create 6-month placements, and they're specifically aged at young people between 16 and 24 who are on universal credit. So the aim of it is to prevent minimise the risk of those who are potentially out of work for a very long time. So as I said, it offers businesses funding, and the PRCA will be acting as a representative body for the PR industry. The government requires anyone interested in the scheme to apply for 30 placements. Now, obviously that's quite a lot for smaller organisations. So for those wanting to apply for less than that amount, they can apply through us, and we will manage the applications process, government are also giving £1,500 to all the organisations to take these placements on. So it's a real win-win for everyone, and I'm really proud to be working with organisations. We've had a great deal of interest in the scheme already.
No, great, and thanks for that. I mean, it's a very positive scheme. I mean, I know it's an awful. I do think the government has done an amazing job in a short period of time when it comes to the furlough scheme and various other schemes, grants, and also the Kickstarter. And as we talked about earlier on, how to engage with young people, we're going to show them that politics matters. And this is actually a scheme, hopefully, that will get hundreds and thousands of constituents, young constituents, in jobs. And we're often seeing at the moment that it's the younger people who are losing out during COVID. And we're getting reports of, I went to a insulation business in the constituency last weekend or weekend before, and they applied. They had 2 admin jobs, and I think they said normally they'd get about 30 people apply. They had about 200 people apply for basic level admin, and they said people were far too qualified. They actually turned people away because there were so many. Well, they did a lot of them away, but they've never got so many applications and so many qualified people. So clearly, it is a big issue at the moment. So this scheme, hopefully, it's £2 billion scheme, will get a lot more people, a lot more young people into the workplace. It rewards, it basically helps the employers actually get young people, because often, I think it's sad to say, employers will go for more senior people, the people who aren't young, which means young people will lose out. And the only way young people, anyone can get those skills is if they're actually employed. So it's it's a counterintuitive way. It doesn't help that it doubly affects them. They're getting discriminated against when it comes to being hired, and they can't get that skill to get to that next stage, which means, in a couple of years' time, they'll still be at that same level. So hopefully this scheme will actually get them working, get them understand. It's great that you guys are actively involved and actively involved. It's what every company should be doing. Frankly, it's madness for a company not to be doing this, especially of any size.
Thank you, Alexander. I know Stuart's got his hand raised. Hello, Stuart.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a great scheme. I'm kind of still deciding at the moment whether or not I'm actually going to participate myself. Probably is the answer. So I'll probably be looking at getting somebody. I just want to, I've got a half-written email to my own MP at the moment, Alex Shelbrook, just flagging up the sort of what I see as the biggest problem with it.
Okay.
When you look at the detail, actually the payment to businesses is in arrears, and I think it's about 3 or 4 months in before you receive the first one.
Okay.
For me, that, depending on how I use my bounce back loan, that's probably a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of flagging that up and I know from speaking to other businesses, that's an issue for them as well.
No, okay, no, I didn't know that, and thank you for raising that. We need to get the money quicker. But yeah, thank you. I will take that forward, and when I have my conversations, I will make people know. I mean, one thing I was amazed by, and this is the other way, is the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. Client for businesses. I don't know whether you know how it works, but you've got half price off your meal. But while I speak to one cafe, she literally would say she submitted her receipts on the Monday, and she got the money in her bank account on the Wednesday.
Yeah.
2 days later.
It's quite.
And I think that's more, and that means you encourage more business to actually take part in it. And I know it's interesting on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. The civil business I went to at the start said, "Oh, it's too much hassle. It's not getting the money. We can't do it." And then 2 weeks later, they joined the scheme because they had spoken to their neighbours, cafe or their restaurants who were doing it. But actually, for that benefit, for 2 days turnaround money, it's no brainer. So Stuart, you're right. The money should come quicker because, I mean, frankly, that's quite a lot of money for 3 months in arrears, especially at the moment when you don't know how your cash is going. I will raise that and make that known. But I didn't know that. Thank you for making me aware.
Thanks.
Oh, but also, sorry, Stuart, I've just looked down. I think you've also asked another question or face on the chat. I just noticed.
Yeah, the
participation in local community groups. So I just will take that if you don't mind, Lee, just briefly. Yes and no, in the sense that, well, I don't directly participate in my local community groups, partly because a lot in my local groups, the settings don't allow me to do it as my MP account. I can do it as my personal account, but not as my MP page. And I don't particularly want to drag my personal account into it. It's not the channel for that. It's a very different thing. But the more people who engage with me and like and follow me on my Facebook, the more people that promote or share my posts into the relevant groups. And that's getting a lot of traction, a lot of people seeing. And I've got some regular people who just, frankly, now post everything I do into regular community groups. So much so, I think other residents are accusing them of working for me. And I'm like, no, they're really not. They're just, interested people who want to promote it. I'm not sort of, I don't, well, what they do it of their own free will. So I don't directly get in that dialogue, but because I can't do it, but I do have to get into a dialogue, often not always, on my Facebook page when it's been shared.
Thank you. And actually, Karai and I were talking earlier about the good and bad things of being so digitally savvy. Karai, would you like to just talk us through some of that, the little tips that we were discussing?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Alex has spoken about so far covers the good. I think we can see quite clearly that social media is a really powerful tool for engaging both with constituents and with other stakeholders. And as I mentioned, it does have that power to unite people around specific issues, and actually give people a direct access to those that they wouldn't ordinarily have. So the good is kind of well documented, and we've touched on that. I mean, in terms of the bad, there's an awful lot we could go into. I'm sure we could spend another 50 minutes discussing the negative impacts of social media. But to name a few, I mean, it's susceptible to disinformation. It can be weaponized by foreign governments, and we've seen that in a number of instances over the past few years. And it also, from what we've seen over recent years, it has a power to, rather than unite people, it actually has a power to turn people away from one another, where we have algorithms from big tech organizations favoring content which prioritizes kind of offensive and outrageous content. So I think that's a real issue, and that's something that I know the government is working on, and the EU are also planning on introducing legislation. But I think that's a really key point. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, there's a really good documentary out on Netflix at the moment called The Social Dilemma, which talks about that, and it's a bit of a horror film in the sense that it does warn you about the negative impacts of social. But as I said, yeah, there's both good and bad to it, certainly.
No, I agree. I haven't watched the film documentary, but I need to. But you're right. It can often be that echo chamber. That's why personally I think Facebook is a lot better, because especially you reach the community groups, whereas in Twitter, as you know, people share comments, either positive or negative against you, to like-minded people who then further, reinforce that same message. And what I have found interesting in my posts is, even on Facebook actually, is almost who takes control of my post first. Because obviously I have positive people and negative people on my Facebook. My rules are quite clear. I don't ban anyone unless they're being profanity or threatening me with death threats, which happens, or threatening me like that, or if they just take the trolling to a new level, like spamming every single post, that takes away. But if they're critical, generally I'll leave them. But if sort of the negative people who take control of a post, it always scares away the people who are positive about me. And likewise, when there's a post and people, my sort of more supporters say, yeah, it's great you're doing this, it also scares away the negative people. I do find that very interesting, because the same people follow me on Facebook, and it's quite tribal in that sense, and they will. It's very rare do I have one post that is that is equally balanced. Frankly, it's generally more one way, more the other, and often you can't tell where it goes. And I thought yesterday was quite a sad indictment. I put up the Internal Markets Bill a couple of days ago was controversial, clearly, but my first post on Facebook after the vote was yesterday morning on the Battle of Britain, 80 years of Battle of Britain, celebrate. Completely apolitical, remembering all the heroes, 80 years Battle of Britain. But the negative side of it, took control. It started attacking me and attacking what was going on because of the Internal Markets Bill. This was a post about Battle of Britain. And yes, I did put a post on the Internal Markets Bill later on, which is perfectly the place to disagree with me on that. But why are you taking charge of a post that's nothing to do with that? That to me was the sort of oddity. And that post, Battle of Britain, got also hugely negative comments, but nothing to do with it. So it's just a very odd way some people work.
It's fascinating, isn't it, really? The mind boggles psychologically. Alexander, we've got another question here for you. With the diversity of subjects, changing political debate, diversity of audiences, how much are you able to plan your PR engagements, and how much is actually reactionary or firefighting? Are there any measurements involved to evaluate resonance, effectiveness and impact?
I mean, the social media tools I use are very basic, so we're just looking at impressions and click-throughs and the very basic aspect of it. My view, and that is, I still haven't found, I can't tell you what the magic formula of what's going to work on Facebook or what's on Twitter. So I said before, things I don't think are going to work, or very positive things that just get ignored, and it's sort of things that don't work. You never know what might inspire certain people. I think when it comes to sort of planning, I have a vague plan. So things like, Battle of Britain Day, VE Day, VJJ, yeah, those I want to put a post out, and I have a rough calendar. I also know when I go and do my constituency visits, I want to post about that, so I'll post that. Generally I'll post it. I don't want to flub, because I do like 5-6 visits a day. I wouldn't want to put through 5 posts one day, so I'll spread that out over a couple of days and say, today I visited X, or yesterday I did that, or then recently I did X. So have a couple of days. It also gives the businesses or cafes I visited almost that sort of airtime, because a lot of the businesses want me to promote and talk about them, and they don't want to be crowded out. So it gives them that space. When it comes to reaction, when it comes to responding to current events, it really does depend. Some things I keep almost for a couple of days if they're not urgent. Like I did a constituent did a quiz with me for her program Funky Quest. It's a game show. I did that. They did it last week. I didn't post about it last week. They put it up on Facebook yesterday, and I think I'll put. It's not time critical, so I won't put it up. I didn't put it up yesterday. Might put it up today, but I might put it up tomorrow, just because there's space. So it's all about working out what's time critical and what's space. Some things. The fact I did a quiz for constituent, and I want to promote this quiz to my followers, doesn't need to go out today, tomorrow, as long as it's relatively recently, then I can use it to promote. So it's about working out what needs to go, and then working out what I've got and how to move it around. And sometimes things are time critical, so I will have to do 3 or 4 posts a day. I don't like doing it, but you just need to do that. But when it comes to measurement, I mean, frankly, I ignore my Twitter reach and all that sort of stuff, because that doesn't really matter or anything. I care more about how many impressions my Facebook posts get. In a sense, I think on average now a sort of average post is about 1,000. That would be anything less than that, and I think, okay, have I done something wrong? Why haven't I engaged in it? There's also times the day in the afternoon generally is not as popular as in the morning or in the evening, so I try and not post anything in the afternoon. Or if I do post something in the afternoon, it's like a sort of one I have to post, but they necessarily need to get any much traction. So I do have some sort of thoughts about it, and I do also schedule posts as well. I don't want to be on my Facebook or Twitter the whole weekend or whatever. So I try and take Sundays off as much as I can. So then I will try and schedule posts. But actually, the platforms are very easy. It takes no time at all to upload a couple of photos and a comment. You can do it on the go, you can do it on the phone. It takes a couple of minutes. It's quite a straightforward way to doing it. So it's quite good that way.
Thank you, Alexander. I was going to actually ask you how many hours a day you usually work, because it sounds like you probably do about 23 hours a day.
There's a lot of work, but it's all good fun. All necessary.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this morning. Has anybody got any other questions before we go? If anybody does, please feel free to communicate through myself or Karai. I know we just quickly wanted to mention the national conference as well, didn't we, which is happening next week.
Yes, thank you. So that's kicking off next Thursday. So that's our flagship national event of the year. It's taking place virtually. And we're really delighted to be welcoming speakers from across the world, the likes of Richard Edelman, podcaster Renee Richardson. We've got organisations from Deloitte, Mars, a whole range of organisations, and we're all united under the theme of PR as a force for positive change. So not too dissimilar from what we've been discussing today, and tickets are available on our website, and there are discounts for group tickets as well. So do check that out. There's my plug.
That's your plug. Thank you so much. And Alexander, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we all go about our...
No, I'd just say thank you so much for having me, keep doing what you're doing. I do think communications, I do hate the word PR because it has negative connotations, you mentioned. Communications is vital for so much, and it's not a one-way street, and that is something very important. I'm sure as professionals, you all know that. You can only do your job as well as the people you're listening to as well, and that is important. So I always say communications is that conduit between people without a voice to people with a voice, and it's a central tool to make sure people are heard, because otherwise you just will not know what's going on, and actually you won't be able to make your mind up yourself. So keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for having me.